Hello everyone, I am KTIV First Alert Meteorologist Owen Balsam, and I want to come on here and kind of dive into the meteorology behind the storms that we saw last night. These were those storms around and just after midnight tonight, and then give you a quick look at your Easter weekend forecast. I will give you a little hint here. It does look like some of us will have the chance for rain, unfortunately, on Easter, so stay tuned to that forecast here coming up. But I first want to start discussing that severe weather we saw yesterday. There was a severe risk, especially an enhanced risk, level 3 out of 5 down in southern Siouxland. Throughout the day yesterday, we had tornado watch, we had a severe thunderstorm watch as well, but for the most part, we ended up staying fairly quiet throughout most of the evening hours. We had something that's called a cap in place. There was an inversion in the atmosphere, which means we had warmer temperatures aloft, which means the air couldn't rise and then thunderstorms couldn't develop. But eventually, that did give way to a few small thunderstorms that did carry some hail with them. Shortly after sunset, around 8 o'clock in the Sioux City metro at least, and then we saw some really big storms develop closer towards midnight and into 1 or 2 a.m. overnight here on your early Friday morning. That then carried some really large hail and ended up causing some damage there in Storm Lake. So it's those storms that I'm going to dive into here coming up. So let me pull that up here right now. All right, so yes, I first want to recap kind of everything we saw yesterday. We ended up staying quiet in the evening, had those storms develop in northeastern Nebraska around 6 or 7, moved east into the Sioux City metro at about 8 o'clock, and then we had those storms redeveloping. So the fact that it was quiet in the evening ended up hurting us in the fact, helping the atmosphere still be primed, sort of, you could call it, for the potential to see those strong thunderstorms that ended up coming closer towards midnight. So I'm going to give you sort of a behind the scenes look at what us meteorologists look at in order to predict, what sort of weather we're going to see. So let me pull up here what is called a skew-T log P diagram. This is one of those charts that us meteorologists look at, and for our purposes here today, we're going to look at the chart on the left side of the screen. The green color is that the green line is your dew point temperature. The red line is your air temperature. So we'll kind of be paying attention to those. And then this is a vertical snapshot of what the atmosphere could look like. So at the bottom of your screen there, that's the surface. That's the bottom of the atmosphere. At the top of the screen, then that is the top of the atmosphere. So we had a cold front move through here in Sioux City at least at about 3 o'clock, but it moved through probably the western 2/3 of the area by dinner time yesterday, and that certainly brought us some cooler air and drier air as well. We had a high temperature near 80 degrees yesterday for a lot of communities. Dew point got close to 60. I don't know if you remember, but certainly felt that mugginess in the air yesterday. But once that cold front passed through, it really knocked out some of that, the moisture, the energy, the instability thunderstorms could use. We ended up falling down into the 40s here overnight. That's where I'm looking here. And we had much drier air as well. So this is a forecast diagram. This is what one model was predicting the atmosphere would look like. This is at 1 a.m. and kind of encompasses most of northwest Iowa. We can use it as sort of a general term. But the effects of the cold front are certainly noticeable here on the chart. At the bottom of the map there, what I just highlighted with the box, that is your temperature there in the red, dew point in the green. So we fell from about 80 degrees to 47, had that dew point close to 60 earlier in the day, and then it dropped down to 40. So we had big changes there in that department. And the cold front, though, was fairly shallow. If we look right above it, there's still a little bit of warm air there. It's not a very cold front. I shouldn't say it that way. I should have said a very deep cold front. And instead, it's very shallow, close to the surface. It didn't really kind of give the whole atmosphere a reset behind that cold front. You can call it that. It was really just focused on the surface, this cold front was. And just above that, we still had a little bit of warm air there. That's what I referred to earlier as an inversion. You can see that on the chart here right now, where we have that temperature a little bit warmer than it was at the ground, as indicated by going to the right. That would be a warmer temperature. And that air kind of limits anything from the ground starting to rise, because typically you need air to be cooler above, and that warm air from the surface will continue rising through that relatively cooler air. So since there was warm air though, there was no place for that air to rise. So it kind of acted as a cap, acted as a lid on our atmosphere, preventing any thunderstorm development. But once we got above that warmer layer, the temperature really started to cool down then, and it's there where we started to have these storms really develop. So these storms last night weren't right along the surface. Instead, they were about a mile, if not a little more, 5,000 or 6,000 feet above the air, above the ground. That's where these clouds had their bases yesterday. And that is where we had some instability still. I mentioned that cold front focused near the ground. It didn't give us a whole factory reset throughout the entire atmospheric column yesterday. So there still was some instability in effect, some energy for these thunderstorms to use overnight tonight, even after that cold front passed, that they could then use to develop and grow upon. So in this white box here and highlighted in the light blue color, we're looking at the distance between the red line, that temperature line, and that kind of dashed white line. If there's any difference between those, that's where the atmosphere is energized. There's something called convective available potential energy there, just energy that thunderstorms can then use to strengthen. So we had that as we looked above the about 5,000 or 6,000 feet up in the air. And the other important factor about that energy is that it was, for the most part, below freezing. I have now added our slanted temperature line. This is called, this is our freezing line. So this is where temperatures are at 32 or below from there. So anything to the left of this, it would then be below freezing. And that's going to be important for our hail development, for those temperatures to be below freezing, and of course for that ice to stay as ice in the hailstone. We need those temperatures below freezing, and that was certainly the case yesterday. We had lots of energy available where the temperatures were below freezing, where the thunderstorms were growing and developing, which then allowed them to kind of tap into their max potential for getting these large hailstones onto the ground. I think that was the end of it. Yes, that was the end of it. But something to kind of keep an eye out there for was the instability we still had aloft. That was the big kind of kicker in the forecast yesterday, is the cold front didn't wipe us out entirely, wipe out all of that unstable air. It still kept a little bit of unstable air up aloft, and that is what kind of allowed those thunderstorms to still be possible and build in the overnight hours, carrying that chance for some large hail. We saw reports, especially in the Hinton, Iowa area, I believe, where we saw tennis ball, baseball sized hail. And then in Storm Lake, there was not a tornado there in Storm Lake, by the way. The National Weather Service has confirmed it as just damaging winds, but still, nonetheless, doesn't really matter, still caused damage anyways. But something interesting there, how we had that atmosphere still primed for thunderstorms even after the cold front. That's typically not something you see all the time, but it was certainly the case here this time. Then on top of that, we had a little piece of energy move through, coinciding with this instability, that really helped those storms to grow and develop. So I hope that offered a little bit of insight, at least, into why those thunderstorms were able to still form and produce all that hail yesterday evening. Now,